I'm the appetizer today. Before Chris gets up here and really gives us what for, but and it's kind of a good thing, I guess, that because I don't even know that I'll read scripture today. I know I've got some scriptures to refer to, but um, what's on my mind today is the getting here, and not necessarily in the lifespan, but getting here today. Because I think about the things that we do, and we all have different stories in what we do, what a typical Sabbath morning looks like, and we get ourselves up and get ourselves together and do whatever it is we do, and hopefully we do that on a Sabbath morning differently than we do any other day of the week, or at least try to, because it is different. It's not just another day of the week, and we know that. But I think about the motivations, and not just the motivations, but the things that we do. I don't know exactly how to verbalize that, but I know we all have different situations, because some of us do it alone, some of us do it with a spouse, some of us do it with our parents, or however that situation may be. I know that we're fortunate when we can do it with someone. I know it has to be much more of a struggle when it's, and I won't say struggle, because most of us here in this room have done it for a while, and it's just kind of the thing that we do. But again, whether we do it alone or otherwise, there's those dynamics. And I know that there's probably people out there that do it with their parents, or do it because their parents do it, who maybe, if they were on their own, seems like my kids have followed that pattern anyway. But that's okay. Everything's a journey, and people have to do what they have to do for their own well-being and for their own journey. But it is the things that we do in coming here. And I guess the bigger question there is, what is the coming together? What is it about this coming together? When I think about those motivations and the things that we do, the process that we go through on a typical Sabbath morning, knowing that we're planning to go to services, what we do. But then, once we've done it, what is it we're looking for? What is the coming together? Is it a sense of responsibility? This is what God wants me to do, so I just need to do it. Is it a chore? Something that, we dredge ourselves out of the house, or is it something that is a blessing, that's something we rejoice in doing, coming to a Sabbath service? What is in the coming together? Are we coming here to, maybe we need someone to talk to. Maybe we need to be the one who talks to someone. Are we here to lift somebody up, or to be lifted up? All those things. But I think, it's the remembering too, because we just went through the Passover and the days of unleavened bread. We know that the Sabbath itself every week is a memorial, a creation memorial. We know that it's a remembering that there is a God, remembering that this is a separate day of the week. It's not just one of seven, it's the one of seven, right? The rest of the time we're just doing what we have to do, but then the Sabbath is that it is a coming together. It is the day to rejuvenate and recharge and do all those things. But it's also the remembering, just like I said during the Passover, we read the scriptures, or we think about the scriptures, where Christ says, as often as you do this, you do it in remembrance of me. So it is a time of remembering, and we get that every week, right? As often as you do this. And some of the simplest statements stick with me sometimes. We were here last week, and it was Mary Charlene back there at the table who said, and I don't remember where she heard it or who had said it to her, but she repeated it, that there was not a Sabbath before God rested. And at first, your first reaction is to think, I can argue that. But then you think about it and you say, God's creation, and And after 6 days of creation, God rested. And it does say that he sanctified and set that day apart as a day of rest. But the simplest of statements sometimes, because God says throughout this word in many different ways, and says it in just those words in Revelation, I am Alpha and Omega. I am the beginning and the end. In other words, there was no time before me. There will be no time after me. I feel all of it from beginning to end. Wherever that beginning was, way before the Garden of Eden, and before the earth was without form and void, whatever your interpretation of that is, but I am the beginning and the end. No time before me or after. There is I was reading this morning about the Indian Pacific, or part of the Indian Pacific Railway or Railroad, and there is it's called the Great Southern Railway, I think is the one that provides the route or the travel. It is a 297-mile stretch of unbent, uncurved track that goes across it's called the Null Arbor Plain from Uldea, South Australia, to Lungana, Western Australia. 297 miles. Thought to be at the top, if not the top, as far as the longest stretch of unbent, uncurved, it's just straight track for 297 miles. Can you imagine that? 297 miles in a straight line. No curve, no... It's crazy, isn't it? And it's just a trivia thing. But I know that there is a straight line that runs through mankind's history. It is the line we might call Alpha and Omega, right? It runs straight through. There's never a time before him, there's never a time after, and it's a straight line right through mankind's history. More than 297 miles. And it doesn't bend, it doesn't curve. We do. We bend and curve. We're all over the place sometimes. But I read that and I thought, that's God. He runs a straight line through the middle of mankind's history and his future. And what happens as God makes that straight line through mankind's history is there's little towns that spring up. When we can read about the old days when the railroad was being built across America, and how towns sprung up close to the rail, because that was a lifeline. That was a big way for supplies to come in, for people to travel, and towns would spring up along that lifeline. And to me, that's kind of what this is. When I say what is in the coming together today, those things that we go through, the process that we go through, even as the sun sets on Friday evening, and we start to think about the Sabbath, and this is a different day. I clock out on my time, I clock in on God's time. It's a different day than the things that we do to get ready to come to service. And then what do we look for when we come to service? And it does seem to me like that's kind of what this is. It's a little town that's sprung up. It's a little community that has sprung up amongst many communities that have sprung up around that straight line that is Alpha and Omega, the God of the beginning and the end. And what I also know is not everyone is near that lifeline. We are fortunate. We are fortunate. We came in contact with a community somewhere, and we've taken up, and we've maybe formed our own little community here on that line. But not everyone is near. Some people depend on carriers. Some people depend on other people for supplies and for news, right? And that's what we are. We're here in the little community to get recharged, to get information, to get news, to get supplied, so that we can be carriers when we go out to those people that aren't near. And granted, folks, some of those people, most of, I guess, choose not to be near. But I also know that some are unready. Some are resistant and maybe even afraid. We just watched again a portion of the movie Chosen, and it's, I guess, even more powerful because you think you know what to expect, but then there it is. And it's in the scene where Peter's out fishing all night. He's getting frustrated. I can see myself there because I get a lot of weeks. I get frustrated. I get bent out of shape. He's had a really frustrating night doing something that he knows backwards and forwards. But yet, the scene where after the miracle is performed, a little bit of resistance from him, the miracle is performed, go let down your nets. We've been doing this all night. There's nothing. But because you say so, I will. He casts out a little bit and he puts down his net and they can't drag it in. It fills up 2 boats, right? When he comes to the shore, it's a movie, brethren, but it's portraying a story that aligns with Scripture. You can read it. It says Peter got out of the boat and was at Jesus' knees and said, "Go away from me. I am a sinful man." Now, when I say there's people out there that aren't near, there's some unready, there's some resistant, maybe even afraid. As Peter, unready, resistant, afraid. When he sees this miracle, he's at his knees. Not just on his knees, he's at Jesus' knees and says, "Go away from me, because I am a sinful man." Now, I know, brethren, that you and I have had some version of that. At some point in our life, maybe several points in our lives, that has been you and me, where he's there and we feel just so unworthy that it's unreal. The funny thing, though, is that even if we read it, once he does that, once he makes that move, it's not a lecture. It's not, "Yes, sir, you've been a bad, you need to do this and you need to do that." It wasn't a lecture. Peter had a frustrating night, and what he saw put him at Jesus' knees. And the question, when Jesus stoops down, and again, I am referencing a movie. I understand that. But again, if they can portray something that aligns with Scripture, I'm about paying attention. And when he meets Peter where Peter is, and he says, "Follow me," the question in my heart is, what does "follow me" say? Because I know, again, I think each one of us have had a version of that, where we're at Jesus' knees and thinking, "Go away from me because you're too good. I'm a sinful person." But he meets us. He doesn't go away. He meets us and says, "Follow me." I know when he says that, he's not meaning, "Okay, get behind me. When I turn right, turn right. When I turn left, turn left." When Jesus says, "Follow me," he is saying to us, witness what I do. Because he told Peter, "You're a fisher. You're going to leave all this. You're going to come with me, and I'm going to make you fishers of people. I'm going to make you. Not that you are, not that you will be as soon as you stand up and follow me, but I want you to witness what I do. I want you to learn from my interactions with people." He said, "I will make you fishers of people." And we know from the stories that they eventually became fishers of people. But for some of them, it was after he had already been crucified and ascended to the Father before they came into the groove, right? So they eventually did become. But "follow me" is being witness to him, watching what he does, watching how he and we can do that. We can follow Christ right through the pages of this book and in our spirit. The Spirit will lead us into all truth and understanding. We all know that. I bet there are people in your sphere of influence who see you as, there are people in your sphere of influence that see you as, even though they may not tell you, they may not jump in your vehicle and come to church with you, they may not call you up and say, can I go to church with you? But there are people in your sphere of influence, everybody in this room, there are people who know you that see you as a follower, I hate to use the word religious, but that's what a lot of people would call it. So-and-so is a religious person. They're a believer. They are a partaker. They are, I don't agree with what they do because they keep all these funny days and they don't eat stuff that other people eat maybe, or, and they go to church on Saturday, but I have to say, so-and-so is a believer. They're a partaker. They believe, and they're doing something as evidence of that belief. Do you agree? Do you believe? Does everybody here think that there's people in your sphere of influence that see you as a spiritual person, a partaker of something? They're not. Maybe they're not ready. And maybe they're resistant. Maybe they're even afraid. But they can see you. They can see you. Some have to, you think about these little communities that spring up along the railroad, to use that analogy, but maybe they're sitting on their horse on a distant hill, looking and thinking, maybe that's something I need to do. I don't know. But there are people that see you as a partaker. Now, I talked about remembering. Remember me, remember, not me, remember him, remember the Sabbath. Do we not know, brethren, if God had wanted to, because we think about this journey that we take, and I said that you and I have probably at least once, maybe more than once, been in that position of Peter, right? At the knees of Jesus or at the feet of Jesus, and can't even look up at him because we just don't feel worthy. And that would probably be today if we're honest with ourselves. We still don't feel worthy, but we know what he's done for us, right? But do we understand that God could have, if he had chosen to, written the Sabbath, written the following of Jesus in our code, in our DNA? Because we look at nature, and we watch nature shows sometimes and are just absolutely amazed at the adaptability and the way things change in order to survive in their environment. Even plants. You look at plants sometimes and you think, are they thinking? Do they have the ability to think? Plants that will grow thorns that didn't normally grow thorns to keep certain insects or pests away. Things that become poison and just all kinds of things that you think, man, he did some stuff. Do we not think that God with us could have just made it instinct for us to keep the Sabbath? We could have been born had he chosen. We're going to make man in our image and in our likeness, and within their genetic makeup, we're just going to make it instinctual to want to keep the Sabbath. We're going to make it instinctual not to want to eat unclean foods or keep the holy days or observe the moons or whatever it is. God could have written it in our code. There are things in nature that we marvel, but he didn't. You and I had to come to a place, brethren. We had to come to a conclusion. And it goes back to those first comments about getting here and the motivations. What motivates us to do what we do on a Sabbath day? What motivates us to come together? And not only that, once we get here, what are we looking for? We had to come to a place and a conclusion. I think about Stephen's and the sermon that he gave. Takes up the whole 7th chapter of Acts. And boy, did he went from Abraham, he covered the gambit. He talked about Abraham and Isaac and Jacob being the father of the 12 patriarchs, and the story of Joseph and Egypt and bondage and Moses and deliverance. And I mean, he covered the whole thing all the way to Jesus. When he got to Jesus, it got him in trouble. They were already getting worked up. But when they realized that they had treated badly and even murdered the Son of God, or were being accused of that, it got him in the worst kind of trouble. But yet that man was able to say, not only see Jesus at the right hand of God, but to say the prayer before, probably the last thing that left his lips. Do not lay this to their charge. And it's like the grace to die well, as Ron Dart used to talk about. Not everyone is ready, brethren, to come to town. This little community near the straight rail, we're not the only little community, but it's kind of what this is to me, because there is that straight, unmoving line throughout man's existence. The Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. And it's funny to watch see how those little communities build up around that. People you see, or people see you, I guess I should say. People see you. I can give you an example. And I've been doing this a long time, and a lot of people know that I'm a preacher and that kind of stuff. And you don't announce yourself that way. You don't. But that's no different for me than it is for you. You don't have to be a minister or a leader or for people to see there's something. And I know that they do these things, right? People see you. And I can give you an example. Last Sunday, they had a memorial service for my dad's brother Sam, who died, it was a year ago this past week. They never did do a funeral or a celebration of life or whatever, so they decided to have a few family members together and do that, because his wife died just a little over a year before he did. But I went there just to partake of the memorial service, and I told them there that day, my dad's one of 13 kids, 9 boys and 4 girls. And there's only a handful of those left, 5 or 6, I think. And I always said that my Uncle Sam was, of all of Dad's siblings, loved them all, but just couldn't imagine the day Sam wasn't here, because he was just so full of childlike wonder. And he was 96 years old when he died, and he was still the same way he had been as long as I've been alive. But we went to that memorial service, and I went there just to partake. When we went to get the food, his oldest daughter asked me, Freddie, you are going to say some stuff, aren't you? And I thought, she said, well, we wanted some, I told you, Mom, and of course I asked Mom about it, and she said, I guess I forgot to tell you, but it caught me off guard. I didn't have any time to prepare. But I thought, I know Sam, I could, okay. She said, well, we wanted somebody to say something, and you're probably the most qualified. And I thought, I don't know about that. But people see. People know. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Barry performed a ceremony for somebody that passed away. Because in your sphere, people know you to be a spiritual person, that you are a partaker, you are a believer. Now, that, to me, is being carriers to those people that aren't near. Maybe they're unready, maybe they're resistant, maybe they're afraid, maybe they're all those things. But we are those carriers. We're taking the news, and we're taking the supplies, taking the light. Now, that does not in any way, shape, or form, brethren, put us on a pedestal. What that does is reflects Jesus. We come here to this little community, and hopefully we're near that straight rail, that straight line, and we carry the stuff back. And our religion, our beliefs aren't in this building. It's not what makes us who we are, but we come together for a reason. Because we have tough weeks. We want to see each other. Most of us do. It reflects Jesus. Witness what I do. Follow me. We ask the question sometimes, or we think about it and think if there could be one other person. I know I've heard it said, and I've said it myself many times. If there could be one other person on that sea of glass because of something they saw in me or something I said or did. But it's still Jesus. We know that. My point is, it's not my job to make anyone conform. It's not my job to go out there and make everybody do what I do. You got to do what I do. It's not my job to make anyone conform. It's not my job to make anyone feel a certain way. It's not my job to bring that person go away from me. I'm a sinful person. It's not my job. Your job and mine, brethren, is to carry his light. And then he does a wonderful work. How do I get someone to see that they need Jesus? How do we do that? How do I get someone to see they need Jesus? By testimony and by witness and by following, trying to emulate him. Do a terrible job a lot of the time. But have that name on your lips. The getting here, the motivation, how we do it, whether it's alone or with a family or with a spouse or otherwise, the dynamics that are involved. What's in the coming together? It's a strengthening. It's being part of a community. It's remembering as often as you do this and hearing those simple statements. Mary Charlene had no idea that she gave me something that was going to roll around in my brain all week. That's what it's about. That's what the coming together is. Simplest of statements sometimes. Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. No time before me or after me. That straight line. And towns spring up along the way, along that lifeline. It's kind of what this is. Think about it as a city on the hill. If you're on a distant hill somewhere, maybe you're out in a barren place and you're trying to send a signal, and you can have a mirror and you can get the sun to hit it just right, and it sends that beam of light and it's visible forever. What is that reflecting over there? Some people are sitting other places. We want them to be here. We invite them here. Had someone to tell me up there Sunday, I like what you say. I like to hear what you say. I think I might come visit your church. Now, whether that person will ever be here or not, I don't know. But they see, don't they? And that's what we're doing. We're just sitting in our little community here, and we're trying to catch the sun's light. Somebody sees it, sparks something, and we hope that someday people are in these seats. The straight line, Alpha and Omega, and the little communities that spring up.